You're tight in the hand, and then just try and get rid of it, basically. So we'll have a little bit of a feel around because it's a cold day here. We can also then, by feeling around, we can get a bit more blood flow going in there, which will warm your fingers up because we don't want to do anything too intense on the tips of the fingers when you're cold. Okay. So we can obviously feel some tension in here. That's going to then lead up to tension in the shoulder. Some tightness in here. Yep. So that's going to come from here. We need to work along here to get rid of that. But again, right now I just want to get some circulation happening, and I want to also diagnose, see if you've got one particular finger worse than the others. You can see there's not that great a movement there in that joint. Okay, so that's something that I'm going to be paying attention to as I come in and work her hand. And again, you can see with that one that it hardly moves, basically. Right? It's very jammed up. So I'm going to be working, I want to work that finger and loosen up some of that tension. That's a bit better. So I'm really thinking I'm going to be, paying attention to these two fingers, the thumb, and I can feel points in between. When it comes to hand massage, some of the most important areas are obviously the fingers and the joints of the fingers. Loosen those up, it'll help prevent arthritis developing, or even if people have arthritic fingers, then we can get rid of that tension. It'll take a lot longer, it's a lot more painful if somebody does have arthritis. You're pacing it out over several treatments. The next area that's important is this kind of muscle of the thumb area here, okay? So that can be very tight. There's a very important pressure point just in between that thumb and finger. And how we access that is to come from this angle rather than this angle. If you come from this angle, you'll probably miss the point. Like that doesn't feel like anything, right? Mm. Whereas if we open it up and come in here, then we're going to more get all, yeah. So that's saying that, yes, that's the point.
Found it. Ouch.
Yeah. Okay, so reducing that level of tension, reducing the tension in this part of the thumb all through here is a high priority. And then the next area is this area here, and even a pressure point in here, okay? Reducing this tension is very important because this can add to elbow tension. So a lot of people who type a lot and that sort of thing can get very tight in here, okay? So that's the kind of goals of where we're trying to loosen up, all the joints. Kind of in between here, because that's going to add to the outer wrist band, right? Then we've got that upper little finger band through here. We've got the outer thumb band coming in through here. We've got the inner thumb band, inner wrist band, bottom little finger band, and then the outer little finger band right on the edge here, okay? So those are, in terms of the bands, that's what we're looking at loosening as well. They're all going to have their origins in the fingers, okay? And of course, then they're going to come up and affect the elbows and the shoulders, but you're not going to loosen up somebody's shoulders without doing this first. And they're going to come up into the neck, the side of the neck, and into the head. Can possibly cause headaches and that sort of thing. All right, so again, I've pretty much got a good diagnosis. Now what I want to do is just loosen up whatever I can nice and easily and get that blood flow going and using my fingers before I start to use something more intense like that chopstick. I could at this stage then decide to work any of these fingers, especially the tighter ones. There's no hard and fast rule that you have to work the thumb first or anything. I often do work the thumb first, especially if I'm wanting in an early stage treatment just to get rid of as much tension as I possibly can in the hand. Okay, remember I was talking about treatment plans. Our first treatment is more like, hi, how you going? Nice to meet you. Our second one might be designed around one of either the feet or the hands. And then after we've done that, we try and, during those treatments, we try and get rid of as much as we can on that first run. And then we often get them back and do an assessment, and we may do then another run over of that same thing. And that's when we get the stubborn tension out. So in this treatment, being her first one, I'm going to just do each finger, but with extra emphasis on the ones that were tight. So I already know the thumb's tight, this finger's tight, and this finger's tight. So even if I have an hour or an hour and a half, 2 hours, and it may take me a couple of hours to do a thorough job here, I would want to spend the majority of that time on these three, okay, just because they're the worst. All right. I'm going to go in quite gentle to start with because our fingers are still a little bit cold. How's that pressure for you?
It's about a 5.
About a 5? Oh, we'll go in a bit deeper.
That's better.
Cool. In my first run over, I'm going to do relatively quickly just to get that, see what can move relatively easy. So I put the chopstick here in, and then I move it. And I'm moving that, you know, for want of a better word, energy, although that word is not very well used, but whatever it is that's causing this tent to become tight and this whole band to be tight, I want to move it, right? So my first run over is just to sort of get whatever will come up way nice and easily and just to bring her awareness to it, increase the blood supply to the area.
When we were doing that yesterday, that you could feel the heartbeat in the base of the finger. Is that pretty normal?
Yeah, that's quite common. So I'm going to come back now and a bit deeper. But again, always want to work under her threshold of tightening up against me, which is what I call a 10. And, you know, I can either sense that or I can ask her if I'm not good at sensing that. But, you know, at first we might ask and then we should learn to sense that. Again, going in a little bit deeper to try and get rid of some of that tension there. Pressure's okay? About an 8?
Yep. 8, 9.
8, 9, yep. Feels particularly jammed in here. So again, I'm slowing it down. I'm directing, I like to direct a bit of energy into the chopstick like a laser beam to break up whatever this is. Again, we don't have very good words in English for what actually creates the tension, okay? And that's why sometimes we have to use controversial words like energy. Because whoever invented English obviously didn't understand this kind of stuff. Okay, now I'm going to come in and I'm going to work this side of her thumb. It's quite an interesting area around the curve. As the thumb curves, this area tends to get a lot of congestion. I wouldn't slide on a deep level the chopstick unless I had usually just the tiniest little bit, like you could dip it in like an inkwell into some sort of moisturizer or oil just to, if you're going to slide, unless the person is quite oily. So I'm mostly doing pressure on, pressure off, move.
Ow.
Yeah. You can see she's aware that I'm working there. You are aware that I'm working here, aren't you?
Most
Yes,
definitely,
yes.
yes. It feels like needles.
Strong sense of awareness.
That's what we want.
And I can feel it right here. It feels really jammed up. And so that again is that feeling of it being jammed up is whatever it is, again, whatever word we want to use. And, you know, loosely we use energy that's causing the congestion. But before I do that, because I know that's going to be quite painful for her, I want to actually come back here and get all this, like really flush. This is what I was talking to you guys about yesterday, about the flushing, having an intention behind what we're doing rather than just kind of going through the motions of, like, I'm supposed to stick a chopstick in the finger. We're trying to flush that channel.
The way we feel it jam, does it feel thicker?
Thicker and harder, so it's not like it's nice and soft. It should be nice and soft. It's like where it's jammed, it's going to push back out at you, and it's also going to be where it's painful. So in particular here, I can really feel it feels like, even though it's a small diameter, like it's the diameter of the band here is about the same size as the chopstick still. It just feels to me like, oh, that feels really tight in there. And it'll feel to you like really painful if I work it. And I don't want to work it here without having done it here. But it's much harder to feel it on a physical level here. I can feel it on a physical level here and all the way past there as a band. But my perception of it on a physical level ends about here. But I sense it as an energetic blockage. And again, those words are, you know, I was trying to, you know, figure out the right analogies or comparisons in English of being something like a blocked sewer where we're trying to, you know, open it up, or a blocked sewage pipe or something, you know, and it's jammed up in there. Or you could look at it in some way as a form of electricity that's not flowing properly. And not that electricity jams up like a sewage pipe does, but something of that nature. And of course, these words are only ways to try and describe this particular thing that Chinese might describe it as blocked qi, which is the whole basis of acupuncture, of course, right? Unblock the flow of the qi.
Just tell me when you want me to hit record.
Now I'm coming in deeper into this spot and encouraging her to breathe deeply. So again, that breathing, like I was talking to you guys about, is like going to flush all this away that's causing this residual tension. So she breathes, I access it, she breathes into it, lets it go. And that can be associated, as I say, with many different things in the body, whether they be physical or emotional. So tension can be caused by emotional reasons, and as we access that tight area, it can let those emotions that are anchored in here now start to flow into the person's consciousness and ability to release it. So again, it's getting quite thick here, and I can definitely feel the band by this first joint. And it tends to accumulate in terms of tension. There's often a real tight spot just above that band. And as I say, I spend a lot of my time, probably 70% of my time, between the point of the finger and this first joint. Because if I do that well, the rest of it will be easy. And if I don't do that well, the rest of it will still be stuck because it's anchored here, okay? And that's what's taken me sort of, 30 years of my career to figure out.
This tea is coming soon.
Okay, good. And there are other tools you could use, like I sometimes use a spoon, like with a bit of cream or something to kind of push that through. It would be the end of the spoon that we don't eat from, and it's only certain spoons. This is again an intense spot here. We can see that starting to bring stuff up for her. We just encourage her to breathe, keep breathing and letting go. Always thinking, I'm not the tension, if you're the receiver. I'm not my crap, my shit, Don't identify with it, just let it go. As I was saying to you guys before, it's really never to your benefit, in almost all cases, to hold on to residual tension. So as I come, I start off here, and again, leaving that space of those few millimeters, 5 or 6, 7 millimeters, between the nail bed and the first point on this band. And my movements here are, first of all, just going into it, holding it, letting her breathe into it. And then I start to move slightly, so I really try and break up that end of the band while she breathes into it, or cries into it, burps into it, farts into it, screams into it, whatever comes naturally as this starts to release. And then as I go down the band, the amount that I move increases. Okay? And sometimes, like I say, I don't wiggle it, I just hold it, kind of project energy into that. Again, whatever word we want to use, chi, like a laser. and then following that more. And now I'm moving a little bit faster, and I'm flicking over it, and you can definitely physically feel that. You can probably even see that as I flick over it here. And as I say, if this is not releasing, it's because it's held back here. All right? So I come back into that spot, holding it, kind of projecting my intention into there. Okay, so intention is like a form of your own chi, a subtle level that can be actually amplified by the chopstick. Interestingly enough, I just had a guy out on my property dousing for water using guava sticks, and it's very interesting how energies can be amplified through things like this. Now what I'm going to do is move the joint side to side, and then I'm going to come into this other part of the band in here. And I'm going to follow it this way. And then come this. And all the while, like, I'm paying attention to what I call the micro, which is my awareness on this chopstick and how it's impacting upon her subtle energy field here. But I'm also paying attention to what I call the macro. And the macro is her breathing into it and letting it go. Okay, so it's important to pay attention to both the micro and the macro, because we're dealing with an integrated human being, especially if you're working on a living person. Because the life force goes through the body in an interesting kind of way. Another technique I can use here is just to move the thumb, that first joint, into my chopstick. And that allows me to, and you can see I'm flicking over that band. And then I'm going to come down and try and see if that's going to let go that way. And if it's not, then I'm going to come back into here